Víkingur, I want to first of all congratulate you on this beautiful disc, Mozart and his Contemporaries. I guess my first question is, why did you feel it necessary to record an album of Mozart and his contemporaries? Like, recording an album of just Mozart piano sonatas is such low-hanging fruit and so easy. Why did you feel compelled to pick music of his contemporaries as well?
Well, because there's like 1,000 albums that are like 3 piano sonatas of Mozart, and that can be great if the playing is great, but to me, it just doesn't sort of give the kind of portrait of and the kind of ideas that I wanted to convey with this album. I wanted this to be like a snapshot of the 1780s, which to me is one of the most incredible periods in music history and in world history. You know, it's the end of an era. You know, you have the French Revolution in 1789, 2 years before Mozart dies. And it changed society for all the years to come, you know, and it was, you know, you have a crumbling aristocracy, and that is reflected in the arts. You know, the music is not merely something to entertain, you know, old counts and dukes and kings, but rather, you know, increasingly it's becoming a vehicle for personal expression, you know, completely free from authority. And I think in that sense, Mozart was, you know, more than anyone else ahead of his time. He has the spirit of the Romantic era in him. I wanted this album to show that to a degree, and also in a way to show that Mozart was really late bloomer. I mean, he's of course history's most famous prodigy, and you know, undoubtedly the greatest, you know, musical genius, you know, in childhood the world has probably ever seen. And at the same time, if he would have died when he was 25 and not 35, he would not be the Mozart that he is to us today, because we would not have the great operas. We wouldn't have Figaro, Don Giovanni, the Magic Flute. You know, you could go on and on. You wouldn't have the late symphonies. You wouldn't have the late piano concerti. You wouldn't have the great late piano music. You wouldn't have the incredible late string chamber music. You would have wonderful pieces, but you would rather have a promise of something great, and certainly flashes of absolute greatness. But you wouldn't have what makes Mozart Mozart, and that's what I'm trying to show in this album, that he became the Mozart that we know in these last 10 years of his life, and he changed his music so, you know, so in a way passionately. You know, he, from year to year, from piece to piece, he's making these big experiments, and he's pushing the boundaries, the limits of structure, of form, of convention. He's using and working with tradition, but always finding a twist on it. He's never doing things at face value, never on autopilot. He never writes a simple melody, you know, like anyone else. He always finds a way to just subtly spice it differently. So in a sense, you know, he's like a master chef who just knows how to use the same ingredients, but to bring out the flavor even better with just the right amount of salt and pepper. You know, but that is Mozart, and I wanted to also show him in the context of his contemporaries, to kind of show how much of a dialogue he was having with the music of his day, and he was very much aware of his contemporaries. He was playing their music, sometimes performing the music of others, and in that sense, I want to, you know, hopefully carefully choose, you know, the very best works of what I think are the very best works, and also which I thought were in perfect dialogue with specific works of Mozart. So I took that D minor sonata of Cimarosa and had it just before the D minor fantasy of Mozart in the same key. It just works like a perfect prelude. The C minor sonata of Galuppi, the movement, just goes like an incredible, like a prophecy or a prelude into the C minor sonata of Mozart, which is where I believe the romantic piano is born. You know, in that piece, it's one of the most revolutionary pieces of all time, as revolutionary in my opinion as the Pathetique or the Moonlight Sonata of Beethoven, but very often overlooked today. But really one of the great sonatas of the whole repertoire. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I just wanted to give a kind of mosaic feeling for Mozart and show him, you know, in a very progressive light. Also to tackle music that you may know, of course, and some things you will know, and other music that you might not know, like the small jig, which is in the end one of the most futuristic things ever written. You know, I played it in California in September at John Adams's Ojai festival, and in that concert was Esa-Pekka Salonen, who was so happy to hear the jig. I don't think he knew it or hadn't heard it, but he came to me afterwards. He was like, "That jig is cosmic," which is so true. It sounds like I don't know, like it's like almost a 12-tone row. It sounds like something written in the 1920s rather than the 1780s, that jig, and it's basically, and that little jig is kind of the key to the whole album, because he wrote that jig when he was in Leipzig. Mozart, he was kind of having a refuge from reality. He was fleeing horrible situations in his life. He was in Leipzig. He just wanted to be close to Bach's grave in the Thomas Church, and so he writes the jig in one day, and that's the thing. This whole album would have been impossible had he not encountered the music of Bach by coincidence in 1781 when the album begins. And these last 10 years of his life, everything changes for Mozart because of Bach, I believe. That's slightly simple to say it like that, but there's no denying that the influence of Bach on Mozart's music, on almost every single measure of the music, is immense. It just becomes more polyphonic, more meaningful, richer, more experimental, daring, just like Saladin says, more cosmic.
Mm-hmm. So, and you really, looking at the program, it's diverse. There's sort of, there's two big Mozart sonatas, but you go sort of further afield. There's music of Cimarosa and Galuppi and Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. Like it's really diverse. One of the things that really struck me on the disc was actually the two snippets of the two Cimarosa keyboard works that you arranged. When I heard the melodies, it's like, it's a piano aria. Cimarosa is such a major opera composer. It's like a big aria for the piano. You arranged these snippets. What kind of problems did that create? And how did you go about that?
Well, when I was preparing for the album and playing through all the piano music, keyboard music I could find from the 1780s, literally every single piece I could find by any composer, I came across those Cimarosa pieces, and at first they were written in such an elementary way that I just didn't think they worked on the modern Steinway or even on the forte piano. But then somehow the melodies were so good. They're so damn good. They're such nice hits in a way that I kept coming back to them, thinking about them. And in the end, I just decided to completely harmonize them. All these harmonizations, all these chords, those are mine. And I added, the bass, the very soft basses, and I did things like that, altered the melody here and there. But more or less, that's what I did, which means my recordings and my reading of it is really quite different from what you will find online if you look for the score. Right. But that's how it made sense to me. And I think, that's also, in a way, true to the tradition of the time. You were sort of expected to contribute to the composition in that way in certain instances. You were expected to harmonize, to, if you wish, ornament, and just to have a much more compositional approach to the music than we often do today.
Mm-hmm. One of the ironies of this disc is I was reading the booklet, and you're talking about the Facile Sonata, the piano sonata number 16 of Mozart. And you were saying how you're having such a hard time with it as a child. The irony is that on the CD, it's a beautiful performance. It's a great performance of that piano sonata number 16. Do you still find it hard? And what's changed between obviously when you were a kid and now in regards to that?
I don't find it hard. No, I don't find it hard. I find it quite easy these days, but it took a lot of time to make it feel like that. It took me 30 years, I've been playing it since I was, what am I, 37 today? I've been playing it since I was 7 or 8, and at that point in my life, it was the first time I felt, my weakness. Mozart's kind of perfection revealed to me my own imperfections, and have continued to do so to this day. But that piece, it's a funny piece. It's in a way, it's a quintessential piano sonata of the classical era. It's the most perfect piece Mozart ever wrote, if you think about it. It's like it's not one note too many, certainly. It's everything. Everything has meaning. Everything has substance, and it feels like, for me, now when I come back to it and play it, in my middle age, I feel a bit like, I didn't understand the piece when I was younger, because when I was younger, I thought Mozart probably wrote it when he was 7, but Mozart wrote this toward the end of his life, and at that point in his life, it feels more like a sort of a retrospective, like he's looking in a nostalgic way back to simpler times. The sonata is written basically same time as the G minor symphony number 40,
Right.
That we all love, and it's such full of so much apprehension, anxiety, and he's writing the G minor string quintet, also very close to this. And then there's this piece, and it's just like, yeah, I think he's yearning for simpler times. But playing Mozart, you have to practice it like a madman, because anything you do is heard. It's a bit like doing, kind of Olympic gymnastics in a sense. You can't hide anything. You can't. You simply can't just press the pedal down, and you can hardly use the pedal at all. And it has to be so transparent. But I think the older I get, the more I think the key to Mozart is really not necessarily in the melodies, as gorgeous and unique as they are, but rather in the whole texture and the accompaniment. That's the hard thing, to get the left hand to be on the piano, to be as sort of fine-tuned as your right hand, hopefully.
Mm. One of the other things that really struck me about the disc was the sound of the piano. I mean, the sound on of the instrument on the CD is just beautiful. Most of that is because of the player, but I'm wondering about the piano technician. Like, you must have worked with the piano technician. Can you tell me about him and what kinds of things you had the piano technician do to the piano to help make it sound so great?
First of all, we have 3 pianos in the studio. And I actually used only 2 of them, but I used 2 of them, and in certain tracks like the Fantasia in D minor, I used 2 pianos in the same track. I'm not afraid to use the studio to my advantage and to the advantage of the music. And you shouldn't expect one piano to be able to express everything. It doesn't work like that necessarily.
Right.
And more pianists than are actually doing this, using more than one piano. I'm just the only one who's like, stupid enough to talk about it. But the thing is that I'm not shy to say it. I think it's a strength to understand the studio and understand the possibilities of using different instruments and to work with a technician in a meaningful way. My technician for this recording was Michel Brandjes, who's, maybe the greatest in the world. There's no greater technician, at least. There are a few really great ones. So I'm not going to say he's necessarily number one, but I will say that there's no better than him. So he's there. He's like one of my piano saints. And yeah, I love to work with him. He understands, the way I play. So we had 5 days before the first day of recording when we were just prepping the piano, because if you want to reach ultimately the very best you can, from yourself, you have to have a piano that speaks your mind, plays your mind. What we did was to make, like I always do with my recordings, I record much more close-up mic than most of my colleagues, which means that it's excruciatingly difficult, because any minor inaccuracy or unevenness, shall we say, in texture and any 2 notes, they will be heard. And that goes both for the piano technician and for me, meaning if he has voiced the piano so that one note is slightly brighter than the other note, the way I record, this is going to be heard. Mm-hmm. So he has to also perform on the recording, in a sense. The piano has to perform. The piano has to be kind of aiming to be the same level as my playing, certainly, but even more importantly, try to be the same level as the compositions. And that's more difficult. Just like we have to be when we play Mozart, we have to try to to reach that standard that he had when he was composing the pieces. Of course, we cannot, because we're so far away from that level of genius. But that should be the goal still. So you can't have a humble goal when you record Mozart. You have to have kind of like ridiculously ambitious goal, and that's why recording him it's not easy. I took 5 days to make this record. It's 85 minutes. I re-recorded much of it in the second in the 4th and the 5th day. So the things I had recorded already once, I redid almost the whole album in 2 days, at the end, So in a way, in the studio, it's a very creative process. You come up with ideas, you change your mind all the time, and things are really born, and then you come back to them 4 or 5 days later, and they might be completely different. And we used more or less most of what I did on day 4 and 5. That's basically the album,
Right.
But days 1, 2, and 3 were absolutely indispensable. I needed them to reach day 4 and 5.
Mm. We're almost out of time. I'm going to wrap the conversation up this way. You've recorded Philip Glass, Debussy, Ravel, again, amazing discs. What's next for you? Who's the next composer that you want to record, and what do you have in the way of concerts coming up?
Oh, I have so many concerts. I just played 4 I just played 4 nights in a row here. Today is my free day, which means like doing lots of interviews and meetings. Tomorrow I'm flying Brussels, playing tomorrow and the day after in Brussels, 2 nights in a row. Flying Copenhagen the day after and playing Copenhagen that day, etc. So it's just like this season is basically like 2 seasons in 1 season. I'm playing. I mean, who plays? What am I thinking? I'm playing 6 recitals in 7 days. This is mad with travels, you know. So this is really crazy. But it's because of COVID, everything was pushed, you know, back, and I was, you know, and many of us were stupid enough to just be so happy to actually still have, you know, concerts planned somehow, and it all seemed like it was never going to happen. We didn't know if there would be vaccines, if anything. So I just said yes to more than I should have. So I'm basically doing 2 seasons in 1, but it's all, I'm touring a lot of Mozarts. I'll be coming with it to the US as well, to Carnegie and other dates. You know, so it's a lot of Mozart around the whole world, but also I'm working with some great living composers like John Adams, Thomas Adès, doing world premiere with LA Phil of a new concerto written for me by Daniel Bjarnason, another world premiere in Swedish radio and Finnish radio co-commission of young Finnish composer Sauli Zinoviev. So it's really this kind of like super new, I mean, world premieres and working with John Adams and Tom Adams, and then Mozart. But I think it's great because Mozart should always feel like contemporary, you know, just like with Bach or any great music, it should feel like it's almost being written in the present. It should feel part of our time and our day. What was the other part of the question? I forgot. Such a long
what other composer do you want to put the CD next?
Yeah, well, that's a secret. I won't answer. I always keep that very close to me until release. I always want to have the element of surprise, and I aim to be sort of head of the industry with my ideas rather than to have the industry tell me who I am or what I should become. I think that's the most important thing, to always be one step ahead. And you have to fight for that as a young artist. I don't have to fight for it anymore, but I had to fight for it with all my recordings. After Philip Glass, everyone told me, including my record label, I should do another Philip Glass. It has to be another American album because that was such a successful album. And then I did Bach because I threatened to leave if I wouldn't do Bach. And then that became much more successful in terms of everything. And then they were like, "Oh, let's do another Bach." You know what I mean? And then I did Debussy Rameau, and then they were like, "That's great," and that was more successful than Bach also. So in a way, and then they didn't say anything. They were just like, "Okay, what do you want to do next?" But that, and then it's Mozart, and on it goes. But that's it. You have to decide yourself, and I think you have to have an element of surprise and maybe mystery about your choices. That's what I try to do. But I hope I won't be repeating myself. That's for sure.
Yeah. Víkingur, the disc is just, it's beautiful. I've really been enjoying listening to it since my friends at Crossover Media gave me the tracks. We're out of time. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today. This has just been really, really great and such a treat. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Absolutely. All the best, Winnipeg. Stay warm.
Yes. Come to Canada.
Oh, actually, I am planning to come to Canada for sure. I have some dates coming up. Is it this season? Yeah, I think I'm coming to Toronto to play.
Okay.
Play Mozart recital. I'll play it in Toronto, but I'll be doing lots more in Canada in the years to come for sure.
Perfect.
I'll return to the Toronto Symphony as well, and I'm actually going to be touring with the Montreal Orchestra.
Nice.
So lots of things coming up. Absolutely. So stay tuned. In Canada, I always feel when I come to Canada, I always feel kind of a sense of, I don't know, a relief. I feel like a sense of belonging in Canada. It's a weird thing. Maybe it's something about the North, the idea of North, as Glenn Gould would put it, you know. But there's something about it. I always feel very much at home. So hopefully I'll be coming more frequently than I have up to this point.
Wonderful. Víkingur, it's been a pleasure. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care, Chris.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.